I very much value talking to another person about a piece of technology or how they solved the problem. And that might actually be how I learn about a new product. Someone else is talking about it. They're sharing how they solved their problem. So I get to learn how I could potentially solve my problem.
Welcome to Secret Ops, the podcast uncovering the world of operations, one episode at a time. I'm your host, Ariana Cafone, and today's guest is Jenna Pederson, staff developer advocate at Pinecone.io. Now, Jenna has over 20 years of experience as a software engineer. She has run her own software engineering consulting company for 10 years, and she's also worked at Amazon Web Services. Jenna is incredibly seasoned in this field. Most recently, she has turned her attention to being a software advocate for developers. Now, what does this mean? Essentially, a developer advocate sits between the company and their users. And in this case, the users are software engineers or software developers. So they're a very particular type of user that essentially needs to be translated to. So we talk with Jenna around how she's learned how to do that, tips and tricks on how we can also take some of that magic and bring it into our work, but also what that means for a greater sense of product development. Let's jump in. Jenna, thank you so much for coming on Secret Ops. There were many reasons why I was pumped to have you on. One, having been in the technical field myself, I had some nerdy questions to ask you about the current field, but also talking about being a developer advocate, I am terribly interested in because it's something I've heard about, but I've never actually been able to work with a developer advocate before. Before I get ahead of myself, because clearly I'm very excited, can we just start where software engineering really came into the picture as far as like when you realized this is the thing that is my special superpower and I want to pursue this fully? Where do you think that light bulb came on?
First of all, thank you for having me on the podcast. Delighted to be here and to talk about all of this stuff. So for where it really sort of solidified for me, very early on, but as I was about 10 years into my career, I started running my own business. And this was like a software consultancy business. I was working early on in the time that I ran that business. I was working with some larger contracts, longer term contracts to help with some coaching of software teams and helping them build better software. And then kind of the last 7 years of that business was more with small businesses and startups here in Minnesota, early stage startups here in Minnesota. And so like what really kind of motivated me and drove me to continue doing that was just seeing all these different people and types of businesses and like what they're building and how they're building and how they're learning to build and not just build a software product, but to build a business on top of that product is super invigorating for me.
Also insanely difficult because there's all these layers. Exactly. And that's where, after 10 years of being a software engineer, then starting to add in the layers, starting your own business. I also found that when I'm starting my own operations consulting business is I knew operations and then I like really saw operations in all of these different flavors, for lack of a better word. What made you start to focus on more startup businesses? Was it a need that you saw or a gap missing?
For me, I've been very very much in the tech community here in Minnesota for a long time. And part of that is the startup community here. And so I had a lot of connections and like watching people kind of start to build their business and their products or trying to like prototype something or build an MVP to kind of show off. So seeing all of that, for me, it was very much about enjoying the process of like start to getting to something. Also wanting to like make sure that people are doing it in a good way that like sets them up for success when they do have to scale to many, many, many more users and people that are using their product. It's a very interesting problem and it's a challenging problem. Today, it's a little bit different. This is a little while ago, but like as a non-technical founder, not many people were building their own software products back then. There's things that you probably aren't thinking about. And so that education piece is super interesting to me as well.
And this is really important to the context of this conversation, which is you've been doing this for over 2 decades, and the advances in technology and tools that people have evolved so
Yeah.
greatly, right? I mean, I honestly can't even comprehend being in it for 10 years, let alone the leaps
Yeah.
beforehand. Do you find that, let's say, working with founders 10 years ago, that there was more of an educational process that happened than today? Or do you think the educational process changed?
The educational process has definitely changed. It's still the same things you need to think about. You need to think about like how you're going to scale your system, how you're going to make sure that like if you lose data, like do you have backups? How are you connecting different systems together to make sure that they're talking together, making sure that it's architected in the right way to support all the different variables and things that could go wrong as you grow your business and as you grow the product. You still have to think about those things. It is just, it's like there are different ways to think about it now. And with some of the new tools that have kind of joined the market, such as like ChatGPT and Claude and some of their products that help people build, help different people build now, it's just as other things you have to think about. But security is another one, making sure that the right people have access to your product and the wrong people don't.
Yeah, my brain just kind of exploded when you said security.
Yeah.
Because this is literally compliance, security, all of that is, I find just so difficult to keep up with and understand the best practices on. How do you keep up with knowing all these things?
Yeah.
Like, obviously we have all these tools at our disposal that we can search stuff, but you need to have that basic knowledge, and then you have the hands-on experience. But how do you just keep up? Like, how?
Keeping up is very difficult in tech. It's like it moves so fast. I enjoy that fast pace. It is definitely more fast paced now than it was maybe 5 or 10 years ago. But to keep up with the various places, like you have to be plugged into the communities. I think that's an important place. It is good to have a base or like a foundational understanding of how to build a robust product, a robust software system in order to be able to put that in production and bring many users to it. Some of these tools today are enabling a lot of people, which is great. It's bringing more. It's empowering them to build their product or their startup or just to solve problems within their business, which is wonderful. It's amazing. But there are some of these things, that foundational things, security being one of them, that people have to kind of think about. And if you haven't had to think about that before, it's challenging to make sure that you've crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's before you put something in production.
Yeah.
Some of these tools can help you think about that, but they aren't all going to solve those problems for you. In fact, they might introduce some of the problems. So I would often rely on someone else to like handle some of the things that I don't know about. Like I can't know about everything. I'm not an expert in all things software engineering.
That's
Security
impossible.
is one of those areas I'm not an expert in, right? So I would actually rely on other people, either through the company that I was working for, or bring in someone that could help with certain parts that are just not my area of expertise.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sometimes I feel like people look at me as like the operational Wizard of Oz. They're like, don't you know how to do state compliance and HR compliance and data Like, I wish that my brain could keep all of
Could
that
do all of
together.
it.
But really,
Yeah.
it's that community of experts that begin to specialize in these different pieces, and then knowing how to communicate as sort of the round table, the Knights round table, to be able to understand that is really the important part, right? It's about being able to say, okay, I hear what you're saying. Let me transfer that into the language that my clients can understand, because we've gone too low level.
Yeah.
And this gets mostly into, I think, the developer advocate work that you've started to shift to in recent years. First of all, what is that role? What does that mean exactly? And then what does it look like in action?
I mentioned community there. I think it's important to have that community, whether you're a founder or a software developer or a marketer, and that's a place that you can go to kind of get you can get advice. or you can offer advice. That's like the small things that you could be doing with that community. But that was definitely an area that I spent a lot of time doing. And so I had kind of that network of people that, just like you said, like I could go to and ask questions and potentially pass work around to. So that was another way that we kind of did that, is either hiring people or passing off things that weren't the right fit for us. Getting back into how that kind of translates into the developer advocacy world, like I mentioned, I'd been doing a lot of community work. I have enjoyed public speaking and blog post writing earlier in my career. And so as part of running a business, you end up doing some of that stuff. And that was kind of how I got into it, is kind of all of those things. Those are some of the activities that you do as a developer advocate. But ultimately, what our job is to be a bridge between the community and our customers and the business. We're really trying to advocate for both our customers or potential customers to make sure that we're building the product that they need and that they want. So we're advocating internally for them, but we're also advocating externally for the company, trying to help them use our products, be successful with the technology that maybe integrates with our products. So not just with what we're building, but with the different things that integrate with it.
So you're sort of sitting in this translator spot where you're talking to customers and saying, hey, what are things that you need? And then thinking, okay, how can I translate that into action within the business? Now, that's two very different types of users that you're chatting to, right? You've got to have one way of talking to potential customers and one way of talking to the internal team. I guess let's start with talking to the customers and their needs. I find in operations, people think they need something, and then based on my experience, they probably don't need the thing that they think they need. So like, for example, everybody wants a task management platform. And I'm like, that's not actually the issue. The issue is your style of working, or it's X, Y, and Z, your data, like where your data centralized, like that's actually just throwing in a task management platform is not going to help the root cause of the symptoms that you're finding. So I guess to start with that customer conversation, how much of it is kind of reading in between the lines and then recontextualizing what they actually need?
Yes, all of it. So at AWS, we call this looking around corners. So we're doing a lot of listening to what the actual problem is, what the challenge is that they're trying to solve. It doesn't mean that we ignore the solution that they came to us with, but we're trying to figure out what is ultimately the right thing to build that is going to serve their need, that might be even better than like adding another widget to their screen, because they probably don't just need a widget. They probably need something bigger than that or better than that. One of the skills that you have to have is listening and empathy and like understanding where their challenges are. Also what's working too, because if something's working, you want to keep doing it. There's a few different ways that we do this, but sitting in communities, whether that's our, what we call first party communities, that we kind of facilitate. So this would be something like a Slack team or a Discord server or an in-person community that we are facilitating conversations through and making those connections. Or it could be through third-party communities. So that could be any social media that you might think about. So like Reddit is one of them. LinkedIn is another. We have tools that do some of this listening for us. But also like as a human, I want to talk to other humans. And so I try and just kind of keep my ear out and make sure that I'm hearing, and also like asking, like if someone says something is great or something is not great, I want to ask them, what was your experience? Like, can you share more? Some people do, some people don't. That's the stuff that happens like out in the public. There are other approaches to that too. So you might have a customer roundtable. You might have like a first party community, like I mentioned, like a Slack team or a Discord server that has your most engaged customers want to be there and help each other out, but they're also there to essentially help you too.
It's interesting. So you're talking to the customer from the stakeholder, the person that's coming to you to say, hey, I've got this problem I need solving. And then you're listening and saying, okay, cool. I'm getting this perspective. I'm also now going to go to the greater community and those like essentially from the inner stakeholder circle to all of those different stakeholders to then see what else could be contributing to that, or what else could be added to that, or maybe what could be removed from that. But you're looking for these these trends and sort of to get clarity on what the actual need is.
Yeah.
At that point, when do you start to get internal developers involved? Like, I find it is a tricky balance because I want to help people understand, but I don't want to get people involved too early because then it's a mess.
That is a tricky balance. Yeah.
How do you know when is the right time?
It is a tricky balance. I will say that like this listening skill that we are doing, we should always be doing it. Even the engineers should be doing it. They're just maybe doing it in a different way. They might be hearing what we have to say as opposed to directly what our customers have to say. They might be working with the product team to hear what they have to say. But so a lot of the products that I'm working on like today and when I was at AWS, they're primarily for other developers, other technologists to build with. And so there are certain expectations that developers have on how a product works. So I don't know if everyone knows what an IDE is, but it's going to be the thing that you're writing your code in. So the text editor that you write your code in.
It's like Google Docs for developers, but for them to write their code in.
There's a lot of built-in tooling in there that helps us write better software. And so there's expectations about how our product works in there. There's expectations about how it works at the command line. There are expectations about how it runs and operates and sends error messages in a production environment.
For people who don't know and are not technical, errors are the most important thing because they literally give you feedback as to what's working and what's not working. So when you have no errors, you're just sort of lost in limbo. But when you have clear errors, you know what you need to be doing to solve that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So essentially, when we're looking at the baseline of expectations for your customers, who in your case are other developers, other technologists, they're sort of the standard, this is what we expect because this is what we need to be able to have access to use your product. Mm-hmm. And then there's probably the more customization that's happening on top of those expectations. So how does that work exactly? Like, how do you get people involved? How do you iterate? What does that look like?
So some of this is kind of getting into like how the product team works. But in the past, kind of what I've done is we bring that feedback in the form of what's called a friction log, or sometimes there's like a complementary version of this called a happy path log, which is the stuff that's going right. And then the friction log is the stuff that is a friction. So it might not be going wrong exactly, but it's like, oh, I had to click this 5 times. I don't want to have to do that. I would just like to press the button and be done with it. That's a very simplified version, but so there are ways of like capturing this information, and we look for trends depending on the stage at where we're collecting this data. It might be early on in the life of a product, and so we want to get some of that feedback in very early before we actually release it to the public or release it on like a beta or early access. But also like software products need maintenance over time, and they grow and they change over time. We're constantly working on them, and it has to get prioritized. So understanding like what some of these trends are of things that we're hearing is important. So we use tracking tools to kind of figure out 100 people said this, they want this thing, or they don't like how this works. Let's start looking at this because that's the most important one right now, or that's going to help them, run their business better or make more money. There's different variables, obviously, that we look at, but like understanding kind of the prevalence of a particular piece of friction is part of that.
Now, I was a developer for a hot second before I went back into operations, went back into my happy place. But having been in that world, developers are unique types of people. High expectations, very like, I would say like from my experience, very kind of black and white thinking, because we have to deal with a binary computer system, right? Like we are dealing with on and off switches to do our job. So there is a very sort of like structured way to look at things, which is funny because even though there's that structured way, it can get quite emotional in that structure if something's not in it. Yeah. So how, I guess, when you're working with customers that are developers and you are trying to get information from them, hear them, iterate on what they're saying, what are some things that you've learned about that particular customer base that could be useful for other founders or operators listening to the podcast?
I think you really hit the nail on the head that they're a unique persona to be thinking about. I use the word peculiar. They like, and I include myself in
Yeah,
this bunch of peculiar people, unique people, because I am a developer. We tend to be very suspicious of traditional marketing, tracking, stuff like that. And so we have to really earn their trust before we can kind of do some of those things. And so for me, like I very much value talking to another person about a piece of technology or how they solved a problem. And that might actually be how I learn about a new product. Someone else is talking about it. They're sharing how they solved their problem. So I get to learn how I could potentially solve my problem. So that word of mouth is pretty important. And that comes back to community. So when your community is talking about your product, either within your community or outside, that word of mouth is very powerful. Like we trust other humans to like share real stories and success stories and failures too.
Just to jump in, I find that very weirdly enlightening because as developers, you would think you don't need as much of a community, right? We look on technology, we sort of will do our research. Now with AI, we probably lean on that a little bit more. But I'm 100% with you where I want to talk to another human who has lived this experience of working with this tool to understand if it's worth my time. And I know that feels counterintuitive because you would think that our assessing process would be different, but I almost feel like we have that on steroids because of that suspiciousness. Because we're like, this sounds too good to be true. I'm like, it's really like a newly launched product. I don't see a big adoption. Should I even be trying to do this thing? There is a lot of that going on.
And I think there's something here that like with traditional marketing, you're optimizing those messages for the masses. So you only get to talk to everyone at once. You're not always talking to an individual. Yes, your email goes to a person and you can say, "Hi, Jenna, how are you today?" So there's the marketing messaging that is optimized for your product and your company for the masses, right? But then there's the like more one-on-one personal conversation. And even if it's not one-on-one, so it's me as a human developer advocate sitting on LinkedIn talking about something or sitting in a Reddit post or another community, and I'm talking about my actual experience, they actually can see what my experience was. They actually hopefully they're envisioning what my experience was. They can translate that into how they could potentially solve their problem, maybe using this tool, but maybe not.
I actually relate to a lot from a parenting standpoint.
Yeah.
So I'm like 17 months into having a baby and
Yeah.
in the early days, like all of these things are like, you need this tool to solve this problem with your baby. And then I'm like, but do you? And so then you go down the rabbit hole of Reddit. Who's used this tool? What do you think of this tool? What do you think of all these things? Right. So then you text your friends. Okay. Have you tried this tool? Right. Yeah. And it's that like almost for everything that's being marketed to me, I'm also trying to, untangle what is real and what is not. And it's the same process.
Yes. And who did you trust the most when you asked?
The community, like my closest community, community. And then weirdly Reddit. The data community, I trust very, very much, but because there's a sanity there that I find refreshing, right? I'm looking for people to tell me straight up what their assessment is, right? I don't want sugarcoating because I don't got time for that. When you've got a 2-month-old, spitting up on you, that you don't got time for that stuff.
And it's the same thing as a developer in my company. I don't have time for the sugarcoating either. I have a problem to solve. I have a business to run. As a founder, I have a business to run. So I want to make sure that we get the right information to the people, to the developers, and they're able to get the help they need or the support they need in whatever form that comes in.
Now, I will say, just to kind of flip this on its head a bit too, the thing that I love about developer communities is, my God, the creativity is extraordinary. And you'll post like a question on a thread and I will get a full blown like 5-page thesis with code examples. Like people really do care and they really do want to help you solve your problems.
Yeah.
So I guess what are some happy surprises that you have had being a developer advocate and seeing how developers engage in that community?
If you're showing up as yourself and as your person, I think that's how we should be showing up, right? Like not as a robot or anything like that. And like that is ultimately going to be the way people relate to you. So current teams and past teams that I've been on in this space, people are themselves. They are very creative when they're on video. They're very creative in not just how they present a code demo, but like what problem they're solving to present that demo. It's not just I need to send some emails and manage my emails. It's potentially something that has to do with cats, or it is something that has to do with Pokemon. I think another thing that for me that kind of gets me going is seeing other people in the community help each other. It starts by happening if like I make a connection and say, hey, this person is working on X, maybe they have some insight for you. But once that starts happening more organically, that's when it can be really powerful. It's a good thing to see in your community.
It's so fun to watch that too. And I also, like when I'm looking at tools to adopt for operations or back in the day from a technology perspective, yes, you're looking for good documentation. You're looking for how you can use that tool within your environment that you've set up. Mm-hmm. But I'm also looking for who the heck is responding to those community posts? Like, and how are they responding? Is it sort of this like auto response from the support and then it doesn't really get followed up on? Or are these individuals or product advocates that are saying, hey, I've had that same problem. Here's how I've solved that. That for me is a huge reason why I adopt tools. Like my favorite tool, Coda, has incredible community posts. Like it's insane. Just because you sort of solve a problem from their human experience. And that's not, it's rare. I hate to say it, but it is rare in finding those tools that do that. But then once you do, whew, chef's kiss.
That's actually really interesting because that is one of the things that developers that we look at when we're evaluating products. We look at, is there a community around this product? Are people talking about it favorably or unfavorably? Is there good documentation? Is there good help and support? Is there a forum? Are there other like examples, code examples or integration examples with other tooling? How does it integrate with other tooling? Obviously, there's a lot of like variables that go into making that decision.
Okay, so I want to leave founders who are listening and other operators who are listening with maybe a pro tip that you would have them take and put in their back pocket when it comes to developer relations. So let's say you have a founder working with a development team, or you have operators working with a product team. What is one thing that they should keep in the back of their brains when they're working with developers or other technologists?
That really goes back to like developers, technologists, we're very peculiar people. Like if you bring traditional marketing or traditional sales tactics, it's not necessarily going to work. It can work. It might take a little bit longer. I think the other like piece of advice I would give is that like get out there and talk to people. Like as the founder, get out there and talk to people, but talk to developers, I don't remember if I mentioned this or not, but as developers, we may not be the ones like writing the checks to buy your product. But we have a lot of influence. Like there's actually research behind this that says that we have a lot of influence on the decisions that are made. And so hearing what they have to say and talking to them, learning about kind of their problems and challenges, especially as it relates to your tool is going to be important.
Well, this has been so much fun. It's taken me back, get me invigorated again to check out some new technology. Before we wrap up today, I do want to ask you some rapid fire questions about you as a human being. So I'm just going to shoot them your way and then pop in with the first thing that comes into your head.
Okay.
So first question is, what is the favorite part of your day?
Not work related, but waking up my kid in the morning or like walking into his bedroom.
Just the best.
And also a cup of coffee.
Yes.
Yes.
Double espresso for me.
Yeah.
What is something that makes you little kid happy?
I mean, I've been doing community building work for a long time, and that like getting to see the community come together is like, that makes me a little kid happy. I just watching people talk about what they built or what they learned or show it off or, make a connection to find a new job or to hire someone.
What is the best purchase you've made under $50?
I was going to say my Kindle, but that was a little bit more.
We'll take it.
Um,
We can take that.
well, yeah, it's not under $50, but it was at some point it was around there. I use reading as my escape after work or before I go to bed. And so that gets a lot of use.
Love it. What is the most important lesson that you've learned?
This goes back to kind of what I mentioned earlier, but just listening to people, hearing what they have to say, and not always like listening with the intent to respond, but just to listen. And people want to be heard.
Last question is, what do you want to be when you grow up?
I'm still trying to figure it out.
Me too.
I've obviously in the tech space, I've done a lot of different things in this career, but the kind of final thing I've always wanted to do is to teach and to educate. And I am already doing that in some form. So I've kind of checked that off. So I expect that I'll do something in this realm for a while.
Amazing. Jenna, thank you so much for sharing your experience. If people are listening and they want to know more about you and follow your work, where is the best place to find you?
The best place to find me would be on LinkedIn. My username is just Jenna Pederson.
Jenna, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Secret Ops listeners, thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe wherever you find your podcast and share it with a friend, family member, your grandma. Go for it. And we will see you next time. Bye.